Welcome, everybody. This is November 18th, 2025. It's our 5 o'clock Board of Education meeting. We are going to begin by indicating who is here. Clark, will you start?
Clark Nelson.
Karen Winder.
Chris Wynn.
Connie Burgess.
Kim Chandler.
Julie was here. I don't know where she went.
Todd, are you here?
Todd, will you?
Sorry. Todd Hauber.
Ben Worsley.
Nicole McDermott, and I'm assuming Julie will be here in just a second. Oh. Introduce yourself, Julie.
Julie Jackson.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and turn the time over to Todd for a budget update.
It's fun to be at this side of the table because I actually can see everybody and not look over shoulders. So we're going to spend a few minutes this afternoon and talk about the tax, what I'm calling the T&T budget disruption, having to do with the tax rate that was not certified by the State Tax Commission. So we'll talk through a little bit what their decision was and what that impact is. We'll talk about the fiscal and timing issues that presents for us. We will take a few minutes, or as long as you want, and talk through what the fiscal considerations are. How do we manage the financial situation as we move forward? And then look at what are some of the long-term budget considerations that we want to keep in mind as we look at how do we address this year's particular challenge. So here's the letter from the Tax Commission. It's really small, but when it came, it made a big splash. So what we received here on September 17th was notice from the Tax Commission that they had not certified our tax rate, and that the particular statute that we had not complied with, or had not fully complied with, in my opinion, is that we did not have a separate agenda for the tax hearing itself. Now, we had produced an agenda, but it was coupled with the agenda of the regular meeting that was held the same day. So we had all the agenda information, but what we failed to do was to have two different agendas published as two standalone agenda items. So that was the technicality. What made this particular year challenging is that the legislature had changed the authority of the Tax Commission. In years past, the Tax Commission had a responsibility to look and make sure that truth and taxation processes were followed, but they didn't have this authority to actually deny or approve, even though they went through an approval process. The statute that changed for this year was that they could not certify unless all of the provisions of the tax law had been adhered to. So that's what's different between last year and this year. And that's of note because we followed the same process this year that we did last year. And last year the tax rate was certified and this year it was not. So that's what caught us off a little bit is, well, we did the same thing. Why do we have a different outcome? In their opinion, the outcome's different because their authority had changed. What does that mean for us? It means that the tax rate that we had approved as a board, so those are the items that are in the pink colors there, those rates were moved back to what is the auditor's certified rate. So those are if you look at the final rate column to the second to right, there you'll see the rates were simply moved back to what the auditor had certified the rates to be before the tax hearing. So we didn't move back to last year's tax rate. So it's not like a full reversal back a whole year. It just goes back to the certified rates from the county auditor. Does that make sense? Because I know I've had questions, people said, well, is it just last year's rate? Not really, no, it's not last year's rate. It's the certified rate before the board's proposal. What does that mean? That means that we have a one-year disruption in our budget. So we do not have the tax authority to raise the additional revenues that we thought we would raise in our budget. And assuming that we would restore that next year, so the board has the ability to generate these taxes next year. There's no prohibition, there's no, if you miss this year, you can never do it again. It's not like that. the board can go and make up for the lost revenue. So if you look at our opportunities through that lens, we have a one-year challenge. It's this year's fiscal challenge of $14.5 million on the operating side and $3.2 million on the capital side of our budgets. As we look at what are our opportunities, or how do we address this shortfall on the operations side, we have a history of coming in under budget about 2% every year. So this is looking back 7 years as to how much under budget we've come in. That 2% average is about $14.5 million. So one of the options going forward would be that we hold steady on the budget. We don't actually go in and cut budgets. We say that we are going to manage the budget through this year with the intent that we experience the same under budget that we've had in the last 5 to 7 years. What that means is we have conversations saying that we do not make any unnecessary budget expenditures, that we reduce scope of projects to keep them constrained and less than necessary or than may have been envisioned at the time. We can delay expenditures. We often get to the end of the fiscal year and people will say, oh, I got budget. I need to spend the budget. We say, don't do that. Just this year, don't do that. We need to save those dollars so that we can get through this fiscal year. Eliminate discretionary spending. We can sweep balances from last year that are brought forward into this year. We just say, we thought you'd have it, but now you're not. And we are able to manage the budgets that way. We can also look at contracts. We also, on many occasions, a vendor will say, we'll give you an extra discount, 3 to 5% if you pay for your 3-year contract all up front. And we would just simply say, we can't afford to do that. We'll not take the discount so that we keep the cash flow under control for this year only, and then move forward with contract discussions on that basis. So those are the ideas around. We just hold steady and work with all of our managers and directors to make sure that we're not spending more than we absolutely need to for this fiscal year. Another area within the budget is to look at reserves. You've seen this chart before. This represents the different areas in which we have reserves. Some are reserves that we can't touch. Some are reserves that we can touch. Some are reserves that we can move around and delay, and others are ones that we need to keep hold and on target. So here are the areas. I'm going to pull out some ideas from this chart that are worth considering if we want to go down the path of using reserves for, again, 1 year with the anticipation that we'd make up those dollars the next year. Within our retirement program, so the district offers an early retirement incentive as well as a retirement benefit. That program is fully funded. We go through an actuarial study every year to determine how much money needs to be held in reserves. And then on top of that, we've reserved an additional 30%. District experience has been that actuarial study will have some variability to it. So we will put an extra 30% in just to cover variability. Well, this last year, the variability went in our favor. As the actuaries went through their analysis, they actually identified a $10 million reduction in the reserves because we had better interest returns on our investments. So that was a positive. So we have about $11.3 million in that excess reserve. This doesn't change any benefits. It doesn't change any decisions that way. It's just we have more reserves than is necessary to be covered at 100%. And so it would become available. I also understand that the district in the past has actually dipped into this particular reserve to cover shortfalls at other times.
What's the typical 30%?
About this much.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah. It'll range between 9 and 12. Within our planned projects, we have had about $7 million set aside for different IT projects. Some of those based off of the study that was done in 2022, where a third-party team came in and reviewed and said, this is best practice, this is what you could improve upon, these are things that you're doing well. At that time, monies started to be set aside to address those opportunities of things that we could improve within the IT area. The ERP, set aside ERP is our accounting and human resource system. We've set some money aside. We know we're at the point where we should be upgrading or changing that system. And so monies have been set aside to that end. So we can identify those. Those are things that don't have to happen today, can be delayed. And so that's worth looking at. For the last couple of years, we've been saving money towards the Wellness Center number 2. There is a capital outlay that is necessary to accomplish that. We've saved $3 million towards that end. This, again, could delay. There's not an immediate necessity to put that online, and so this would be an opportunity for a delay.
Just a quick follow-up there,
Yeah.
Todd. What is the projected outlay?
So
This is $3 million set aside. What
The
is
target towards 10.
Thank
We
you.
think we need about 10. The construction is probably between 4 to 5, depending on the site decision. And then the first year of having that center in place, we'll have a contract with a third-party provider.
Right.
So we want to have the front load that for that contract, and then the savings that are generated by having a center would then start to generate, and it would be self-sustaining after that.
Understood. Thank you.
The next one is probably a less attractive one, but we're turning over every rock in our budget story here, and that is school reserves. So the schools do carry reserves in their accounts as well. Part of that reserve is funded through a district allocation that we provide to help support the schools. The reserve level in the schools is actually around $11 million. So this particular number of just under $5 million represents how much the district annually provides to schools to support the school level programming. So the messaging here would be we would hold back on that distribution with the encouragement of the schools to spend down their reserves. But we can't go beyond what we would normally give them. So that's what this would be.
Can you just give us an idea? And maybe this is something that maybe some of our principals could chime in on, or former principals.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
But what are those reserves generally, like, is that just emergency funds? What is that usually used for in the schools?
It can range from a number of things. It could be very specific reserves, in that they are saving money towards the purchase of some special equipment in an extracurricular program, whether it's uniforms, helmets for football players, the sticks and goals for lacrosse, soccer goals, those types of equipment. You won't ask the participants to try to pay for all of that in 1 year. You'll spread that cost across multiple years of fee payers. You'll build up a balance until you're able to make that purchase. So some of the monies could be tied to that, in which case we wouldn't want to touch any of those dollars.
But you're saying that the district also gives reserves. That largely should come from fees. So that's why I say, is there a differentiation between the fees that are reserved at the school for things like that, and this reserve that we give to them?
Yeah, so at the school level, the school funds, or the district dollars that come, are commingled with the fees if you're in the extracurricular programs. So you might have a program that costs $50,000. You're going to raise fees for about $10,000 of that. You might have some donations for another $5,000, and then the district brings in money as well through now that we don't assess fees in all program areas. We have some dollars that we put in. So it'll be a combination of all those dollars. So those balances come down to a question of, well, which of those $3 did you spend first? Did you spend that donated dollar first? Did you spend the fee dollar first? Or did you spend the district dollar first? This starts to put pressure on the idea that you spend all of your other dollars first, and the district dollar is the last dollar spent. So if you're holding on to a reserve, it's a district dollar that's in reserve, not a dollar that was assessed through a fee.
Okay, thank you.
We also have the Economic Stabilization Account. This is a statutory account. where we can reserve up to 5% of our operating budget in this reserve. This is when someone says, do you have a rainy day fund? This is the rainy day fund. We have other reserves, but this one is the one that you would call the rainy day fund. Now, these dollars, because they're statutorily identified, they can only be taken out by board resolution. The other funds are administrative. You can direct superintendent, hey, go do this, and it happens administratively. This one would require board action to take the funds out. Typically, these funds are for actually economic downturns. So there's some economic crisis within the state and we're not getting monies, or there's economic crisis within the nation, we're not getting federal dollars. There's a drop in those revenues. You would turn to this fund to cover that situation. Our particular situation of having a tax rate denied doesn't quite fit the definition. It's not excluded, but it doesn't quite fit. And for this one, I would say this is like one where we keep our powder dry, because we do have economic forecasts coming that aren't positive, and we also are aware of some budget changes coming down the line, both from the state and the federal governments, that we may need to have these reserves on hand to address those situations as they arise. The next area would be to go in and start reducing budgets. So we could look at implementing a hiring freeze, which we've actually walked into at this point. We don't have a lot of non-classroom positions that generate a lot of money. So we can go through the exercise, but it won't generate a great deal, but is worth the effort as we try to make sure we keep our budgets balanced. We also, when we build budgets, there are positions that are vacant, meaning that we know we're going to hire the person, they're just not on board today when we're building the budget, but we anticipate hiring them. Well, we would just simply say any vacant budget positions you don't fill. If they weren't filled today, don't plan on filling it for the balance of the year. We could also look at travel. So non-student travel, we would eliminate non-student travel and generate a little bit of savings there. We also have a subsidy that we provide to the Granite Education Foundation. A number of their personnel positions are funded through a district transfer. They have reserves at this time of a little over $3 million for a one-time basis. We could forego that transfer of funds. The last couple of years, the district dollars appear to be building their fund balance. They've moved from 1.5 up to 3 million. So maybe a one-year hiatus would be in order. We could also look at an across-the-board reduction. The 14 million that we're talking about is unrestricted or unreserved funds. So I can't put a 2% budget reduction on special ed or on Title I programs, because those dollars can only be spent for those purposes. So this would be for programs that aren't restricted by the state or the federal government. If we do that type of exercise at 2%, we would generate about $3.7 million as an across-the-board budget reduction. We're also, this year we have implemented the additional instructional coaches into our schools. We're finding that we're not coming across as many qualified individuals to fill those positions. So it could be that we just stop at this point and say, they're not there, so therefore we'll just save those dollars, plan to use those dollars next year when the pools are deeper and we have more qualified candidates to participate. Another item that we're finding is that our rental rates for our facilities are not capturing true cost of operating the facilities. Under statute, we're allowed to capture up to our actual cost. We can't make profit. We're not even capturing our costs right now on our fee schedules. So another area that we could look at is to start adjusting our fees to capture those costs. Again, it won't be lots of money, but it would be better than nothing. We talked about contracts, getting into multi-year contracts. We could also take a look at contracts that we have in place right now. All of our contracts have a clause called a non-appropriation clause. which means if the money isn't available, hasn't been appropriated by the board, then we can begin to cancel those contracts. So we could start an exercise where we go through and look at our contracts and determine which ones should be concluded or put on hold under that provision. At this point, so this is on the operating side. Executive leadership team met earlier today and we walked through all of these scenarios and said, what are the pros and cons to each of these ideas? And we put together not a recommendation so much, but just some thinking. And now I can't pull it up. So in our thinking, what we would look at doing is that we would do a combination of these different ideas, combinations of managing the budget cash flow, look at reserves, and look at budget reductions in a combination of efforts. The primary piece of money that we would lean on would be to look at that excess reserve for the retirement program to the amount of about $8.5 million. So not all of it, a lion's share of it, but not all of it. But again, that's an excess reserve. It doesn't change any of the benefit offerings or operations of the district. We would look to continue a hiring freeze, a soft hiring freeze, which means that as positions come open, those positions are then brought to the ELT and we review those and determine whether that's a position that does need to be filled or is it one that could be held off for a while. We would also look to, and that would be about, we don't know what the dollar is on that one specifically, so that would be more an exercise than capturing dollars. We would also look at stopping or holding on the instructional coaches. That would save about $1 million. In that exercise, we'd look to reduce the IT initiatives by $2 million. We would delay the ERP or the accounting and human resource system. That would save $3 million. Then we would look at an across-the-board reduction in the sense that we would communicate that we're going to have a 1% to 2% reduction in budgets, but not take those dollars away, but go through the exercise of please review your budgets and determine what do you actually need to do for the balance of this school year. And we would expect that again to be a dialogue where we are communicating with directors and schools to see how we could manage that through the rest of the year. And then we would also have a soft freeze on non-student travel, meaning that anyone who would like to do a travel would have to go through an additional review process by the ELT. And through those means, we believe we can capture the $14.5 million for this fiscal year with the anticipation that the board would look to a tax increase or an effort to recapture the lost revenues at the next tax cycle. Does that make sense? All right, let's jump over to the capital side. In this one, we're about $3.2 million short. 900,000 of that had to do with providing additional revenues for deferred maintenance. Thank you very much for putting that in there. We're gonna have to pass for a year. And that's kind of the message there is we thought we would get it, it would have been great. We're just not gonna try and recapture that. We'll just let that go for a year. Outside of that, we could look, so the remaining $2 million, we would just manage projects. The $2 million isn't significant enough to throw projects out of their planned cycles. So the impact will really be more felt at the end if we don't recapture those dollars in the next tax cycle. If we don't want to go into delaying projects down the line, we could look at asset liquidation, which means are we selling school properties or school assets to make up the $2 million that we've lost. And then there's also some accounting maneuverings with regards to debt service transfers that we use with our IT department that's allowed under statute, and we just manage that differently to capture about $1.5 million. So the capital side, we think we can really just manage through other practices, and again, with the anticipation that those dollars would be made up next year at the next tax cycle.
And by saying that, you mean all those other things other than asset liquidation?
Yeah, asset liquidation would be permanent, but then it doesn't require a makeup for this year. You would just have your tax increase for the rest of the pay-as-you-go cycle. This is all in context of how does this look long-term, so looking like what happens in 2027 and beyond, because that would be the next tax cycle, is generating revenues for the fiscal year 27. We already know from legislation that was passed this year that we have a $7 million shortfall in state monies. That again has to do with the voted and board leeway programs. That will then double, so it becomes an additional $7 million in fiscal year 28. So as we look at opportunities now, do we start to prime the pump, so to speak? Do we start looking at ongoing cuts even today, which then would benefit us as we get into the next budget cycle conversations? And then we have in fiscal year 29, that's when the last of the state support for the school fees ends, and the district would then have to generate that much money to make up for the lost fee revenues through that legislation.
Is this extended an extra year because we also weren't approved of this year because it is based on 2 years?
No, so these have actually do not take into account the fact that we had a tax proposed increase. So this is assuming actually the scenario we're in right now.
Okay.
If we had generated more revenue, there would have been a different impact.
Would it have been a lesser impact?
It would have been more.
More, okay.
And then there's all kinds of questions around the federal impacts, and this is trying to look through a crystal ball that's cracked and foggy, and who knows what's really going to happen. But there are some timelines that we have to brace ourselves for. In the fiscal year 26, so the year that we're in right now, we were already informed that the Gear Up funding would not be available. So we have already been going through processes of funding that internally and working with the university, who is the grantor in this process, to help manage those costs. So that's happening, we're managing that now as we speak. We also received our Medicaid letter, and the FMAP rates have changed, meaning that we're eligible for less money, or in other words, we have to put more of our own money into the Medicaid costs, and the federal government will reimburse. That's looking to be something in the $2 million range. So those are things we're managing today, working our way through. As we look at what the potential budget is for the federal fiscal year 26, and that right now, we don't know what that will be. The federal fiscal year 25 is on a continuing resolution till January. That's not even the year that we're trying to understand what the budget will be for federal fiscal year 26. But if you look at the conversations that are happening right now, we can expect title programs, in our case, to lose about $4.5 million, adult ed about $500,000, and special education is unclear at this moment as to what those impacts will be. So we do have some things that we need to brace ourselves for, and that's where that economic stabilization account is helpful, because we can move forward planning and programming and supporting our students and worry less about what is the federal government doing, because we have dollars that we could bring to bear and get our schools up and running, and then we just wait for the federal government to work out its things. With that, I am open to any feedback or comments, if there's any guidance that you would like to give us as we manage our way through fiscal year 26.
Can I ask a question to clarify? When you're talking about using funds from reserve accounts and then recouping those funds at the next tax cycle, you're talking about, I'm assuming, not only reinstating the increased rate that the board approved this year, but approving a rate over and above that to recoup the money to replenish the reserves. Is that right?
Yes, so there are two levels. There is put the rate in place that would have been in place so that on an ongoing basis moving forward, we can fund the programs that we funded this year. If we want to add on top of that the lost revenue, so in other words, as you've described, replace the reserves, yes, you could do that as well on a one-time basis and then bring it down in a subsequent year. That's all open for discussion. Like, do we feel compelled that we need to make up that piece of reserves, or do we just let reserves build as they normally do through operation savings and things of that nature, and they replenish themselves over time?
Thank you. And then the Gear Up example, that's federal funds you're talking about there, but I guess it begs the question for me. I feel like we should be looking at discussions on some of these programs about whether or not we should be continuing them and not just automatically saying we're going to figure out how to fund them. And I'm not seeing a lot of that in this discussion.
On this slide that I have here, this is heads up. It's not deciding one way or the other. It's just we will have to make a decision whether those dollars show up or no, and it would go right to what you're describing. We need to do that deep dive and say, well, if those monies aren't there, what do we plan to do? Are those services redirected elsewhere? Do they come to an end? Are they managed through some other process? But again, it's a futurity question. It's not asking today, do we need to discontinue programs or redesign programs today?
And I understand that, but I guess that's just one example. I'm kind of talking about this year's budget.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a lot of that kind of thing brought up. Like, are there contracts we maybe, or programs we maybe shouldn't be continuing? And so it doesn't seem like that's been considered much. Am I wrong on that?
So right now we're looking at the $14 million that won't be coming in through property tax. So we haven't gone into the federal or other state restricted programs and started questioning those programs, looking at whether we should reduce those, change those, redesign those. They won't generate money to cover the shortfall on the property tax side. They would be their own standalone conversation of, do we continue those efforts and those programmings?
So there's no contracts or programs that we currently do that would be our ongoing budget funds. Those are all separate state grant money. Is that what you're saying?
A good number of them are, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions, thoughts? So is your recommendation, I'm assuming going forward,
A combination of
a
things.
combination of all those?
Yeah,
And we
we-
feel like that will adequately cover it?
That will get us through the rest of this school year and then set us up for the discussions that we need for next school year on what do we do about tax rates? Are we going to do a catch-up, not do a catch-up? Do we put the rate in place that should have been there? And then that will be coupled with other conversations that actually have to do with next tax year. What do we do about the reduction in state funds? What do we do about declining enrollment? What do we do if federal program dollars don't arrive as we anticipate? Those will all have to happen still.
Todd, you had at the beginning there, you kind of had categorized it by, our net gap by the operations and capital budgets. Yeah, here. The capital budget impact, that's $3 million. Is that $3 million that goes into, I can't think of what it's called, maintenance? Is that what that is? And so,
So two parts. So you think of it about...
because I also know we're saving up,
Correct.
and I'm like, okay, is this a save up situation, and can we just not save that much? And because I haven't seen you talk about that.
Yeah, so on the capital budget, we can look at a couple of things. Imagine a third of it has to do with deferred maintenance. When we went through the budget process, we asked for additional, just short of $1 million of funding to start to tackle the deferred maintenance. We could decide just not to do that. Like, could have had it this year, we don't have it this year. Let's build it into next year's budget moving forward so that you get the $1 million, but don't try and catch up this year. You just,
Right,
we
yeah.
we have deferred maintenance like we've had for decades. And this is not the year to catch it up. The other $2 million is related to the pay-as-you-go funding strategy of the district. Those are dollars that we would want to talk about recapturing, not only on the ongoing side, but do we try to make up this year? If we choose not to do it this year, the impacts will be felt on projects past 2035, because we will be able to cash flow the $2 million. Like, it won't disrupt cycles and schedules.
So I
But
think
when
that
we
was
get to
my
the end, we're
question
gonna
is
run out.
how much of that is that top 10 projects? And you're saying it's
Two-
about 2/3 of that?
Yeah, 2/3.
Okay.
Roughly.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Todd for all his work on this. We spent several hours today together as a leadership team to kind of hone in on some actual recommendations, and we recognize the severity of the challenges moving forward, not just right now, but the next 2 years worth of $7 million declines in our revenue. So I just want to reiterate that this is going to be a very difficult year budget-wise moving into next spring, and then on top of that, with taxation questions, obviously we want to continue to reiterate that we're doing our part to be as fiscally prudent as possible to make sure that we're pushing as much as our revenue and resources to our classrooms as possible. So we'll continue to have those conversations, but you'll likely hear from some community members with questions or concerns. We want to make sure that you have the information necessary to answer those questions.
Okay, thanks, Todd. We're going to go ahead and move on to our strategic plan update and invite Dr. Bramble up.
We would normally like to spend lots and lots of time, like hours, relishing the data here. We are on a tight schedule, so if we could, is it possible to keep our presentation to about 10 minutes? Will that work?
That works.
Okay, that leaves time for questions, and then we can get to the last presentation before we need to move to executive.
We're excited to hear from both Ms. Bramble and Michael Douglas.
Thanks for letting us update the board on our strategic plan. We appreciate the opportunity. So, a couple of things we want to make sure that we highlight are the 2 goals for proficiency improvement in our math and ESL, and our 1% graduation rate improvement. These are a big focus of our strategic plan this school year. We wanted to update you on a few highlights. There's some. Go ahead.
Sorry. What you just said is we met our goals. I just felt like it was said unceremoniously, and that is a really big deal, and I just want to make sure we all understand and also appreciate all the great people who made this happen, because it's a huge team effort, and we haven't done it in a while. So I think it's a really big deal. Maybe you're going to make a bigger deal later too, but I just want to
I
make
would just
sure.
set the stage, so we would have the big finale in a moment here, yeah. So I can't agree more with you. The hard work that's gone into this has been it's been huge, but we've done some really neat things. We're about to show you some of those exciting things on the next slide. So thank you for that opportunity. Just a couple of highlights. We've had a goal for 100% of our teachers district-wide to take a daily attendance. Another one is regular attenders will increase by 10% or higher. In talent development, all employees will complete compliance training, and that'll be at 85% or higher. And then 95% of all contract positions will be filled at the beginning of each school year. So an exciting trajectory that we're on is 85% of employees completing the compliance training. We're at 72%, but we have until November 30th. We anticipate that increasing. And That's on our vector platform that we use.
So if there's any board members who have not, you're part of that statistic.
Yeah, we would love for you to complete it. Yeah, thank you.
Will you please send reminders if we are? Thank you.
Happy to.
Mine's done.
This next achievement is pretty remarkable because it directly impacts our wonderful students. 95% of all educator contract positions will be filled at the beginning of the school year. And we had 98% of our educator contract positions were filled as of October 1st. So we're excited about that. With our regular attenders, our goal is to increase the amount of regular attenders by 10% or higher. So as of our report, 61% of students are attending, 90% or better at this point. So what we're hoping to see is end of year data chart shows a decrease of 1% for the 24-25 school year. And then we have some indicators over the last 3 school years, August, September, October, November. And we are seeing a decrease as of November from years past.
So you mentioned the exciting news about some of the increases. We don't have those official yet, so but we are seeing some really exciting increases in our proficiency and our graduation. So we're excited at some point to share that with you. And I think if you look on some of the state sites, the results are rolling in a bit, and so we are excited about those. The other thing we're really excited about is our Boost schools that we're working hard with, and we wanted to just give you a quick update on what we're doing with our elementary schools. We have these 6 that we're working with, and we've got full-time instructional coaches in those, full-time assistant principals, and that is in addition to the coaching and admin coaching that they already have available to them. The Tier 1 instruction, and it's really, I tried to collapse some of these things that are happening, but there's a lot of unique things that are happening in every school. We've looked at them individually and done a needs assessment and said, these are the things that they really need. But just to give you that high level, they're working towards improving Tier 1 instruction. That's always a goal that we have. And one of the things is making sure that they're using assessment authentically to drive their instruction. They're incorporating small group instruction. They're doing things like having active student engagement and teacher clarity. So there's a lot of things that they're doing to improve Tier 1 instruction that we know needs to happen. Another major piece is behavior and climate. They need to make sure that they've got some clear expectations. And as we looked across the board at a lot of our Boost schools, that was one thing that we noticed, that they needed to make sure those systems were clearly in place so that they had some good expectations for students, and also enhancing their family and community connections. We've had some cool highlights, like from Magna Elementary, where they had an amazing family event that was really well attended, and so we got to celebrate a lot of those things that are happening at some of the schools. District supports that are in place, we have purchased some intervention materials and some targeted support for some of our schools. We're compensating some of our teachers to learn outside of their contract hours too. And then our secondary schools, we have also some great coaching going on, and we've tried to do some unique things here too that are unique to the schools that we're working with. So there's common time for PLCs at Valley. At Matheson, we really had to start with some foundational work and transition a leadership team there. Granger has been doing some really exciting things. In fact, we heard from Jared in our last SALT meeting about what his team is doing to really enhance the things that are happening there. They decided that they wanted to start with 9th and 10th and build a really strong foundation for the students, including some flex time to reteach. And we have some district supports that are moving into those schools to help with the teams. So our content specialists are supporting the work that's happening in those schools. And we're seeing some good things happening across the board. One other thing I wanted to share is, while the strategic plan should be driving everything we do, we're making some conscious efforts this year to attach that to our each school's SIP plan. And I have to give a shout out to Tyler in our meetings where we've been spending some time in admin meetings, having the principals look back at their SIP plans and do some looking at the early indicators that are telling them whether or not they're on track with those goals. And it's been fun to be able to work in that environment and give them an opportunity to look at what other schools are doing and where they're seeing successes. And that. The next is just kind of a preview for January, when the next set of indicators will be shared. We do have a delay in our school report card release this year because we had a standard setting of the ELA. So those results came in later. They're rolling in right now, and we're expecting to see our school report card results by mid-January for public release. So this just means everything's a little bit more delayed, but we will be sharing with you some great news in upcoming meetings. Any questions?
I'll ask one. I don't mean to detract from any of the positive information that you shared, but on the attendance, did I understand correctly that our leading indicators are that we have gone down despite our efforts to go up by 10%? We went down by 4%. Is that fair?
They went down by 1.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I do believe, I don't have a causation, but I do believe that as we have set a goal to ensure more employees are taking roll, it does make sense that that would then cause, if we're taking roll better, maybe.
So our numbers could have been worse beforehand, is what you're saying.
We're not sure that the
what was
data is
reflected.
really accurate because of that. And so that's definitely a factor. And we're trying to look at some outliers too, to say which schools are really getting great attendance so that we can see what are they doing and how can we maybe replicate some of those things. So it's definitely on our radar for how we might address attendance.
Yeah, I'd be interested in those outliers because my recollection from the more granular data previously is that our attendance issues are pretty consistent across the district, which are consistent across the county and the state and so forth. So yeah, I'd be very interested in that data if you have some outliers.
We did get some comprehensive data from Jared yesterday in Salt. Was that yesterday?
It was just
Leslie,
yesterday.
would you have Jared share that presentation with the board? And if they have questions, we'd be happy to discuss it further.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We have Dr. Nerden here to introduce us to this time project. It is something that we needed to introduce now, just because it is a little bit time sensitive, and Ben, that you can thank Ben for that pun. But we also recognize that this may have a lot of questions. I would encourage you to write down your questions because we may not have time to get to all of them, as we do need to make sure that we have enough time for the other things on our agenda tonight. So please listen, write down, and we'll get to as many questions as we can, and then we'll try to revisit this or have Dr. Nerden answer the questions separately.
Yeah, thank you. Excited to be here. Appreciate the time. TIME Project stands for Time Invested for Meaningful Education. It is a little play on words because we are using time to help some of our most at-risk students gain the needed education that they so desperately need and that we want to provide. The concept of increasing the time is not summer school. It is not this thing that we do at the end. It is a 0 quarter or a 1 out of 5. It's at the beginning, and that infusion of additional time, the research is quite clear that if we do that, coupled with some very targeted and improved instruction, that it has some pretty positive results. In addition, the research talks about the kids having a meaningful place to be that's safe, that they're involved in educational activities throughout the day, and that they definitely lose less because of that time that they would have been out, and summer learning loss is real. Again, I've got a few quotes here. Happy to read those, but I'll probably move on and let you read them. Research is definitely supportive of this concept. Some of the big high-level things here is that school will start in June, just shortly after the end of the school year. Third graders would end in May, and then they would start their fourth grade year a couple of weeks later. Like I said, it is not summer school. It's actually part of the academic calendar for this pilot school. We're not looking at doing this everywhere. We want to try it somewhere, see if it works. Teachers will definitely need to choose to work at this school. So we won't take an existing school and say, hey, now you get to do this. But when we pick the school, the teachers will need to apply to work at this new school. Students in that school will definitely be expected to participate the full calendar year. And if they do not want to participate, we will provide them an alternative location, and we will provide transportation to that alternative location. So the idea being that we at school A is where we're going to do it, and the neighboring school B, if you don't want to attend the full extended year, we would provide transportation to location B. We've talked with the state. Food services will be provided and paid for. We worked with the state superintendent. She's helping us ensure that transportation costs for the extended school year will be covered. So the cost of this is just for the employees, and we've got some Title I set aside that will help run us through this first pilot year.
So in addition to that, we have a meeting scheduled. It was actually scheduled for earlier this month to talk about one pilot school with some interested legislators. That meeting will be held with Senator Fillmore, who will likely be a bill sponsor, and Senate President Adams, who are interested in piloting some of these innovative, out-of-the-box types of interventions for at-risk students. So that meeting is slated for later this month. And we're hoping that if there is additional pieces here that need to be funded, that they'll look to assist us with that as part of a 3-year pilot.
Maybe, can I ask just a quick question? Would this be anticipated to be K through 5 or 1 through 5?
It will be K through 5, but the kindergarten piece would look dramatically different. Maybe just a couple of weeks, half days, not the full quarter. We are trying to evaluate our schools to determine the best location. We've not decided on a location, and these are some of the things that we're considering. We definitely are targeting a school with a lot of at-risk factors, disadvantaged students, possibly a place that has some enrollment challenges where we could maybe draw people in. We believe that people will want to send their kids to a school that is provided all summer long. It will be a great.
Most of the summer.
Yeah, most of the summer.
There's some other breaks.
There are some breaks built in. We will, if a community is just adamantly against it, we would definitely look to go somewhere else. We need to make sure that the facility will work, that the AC isn't on the fritz all the time. Again, working through the staffing and the calendar and the alignment with strategic goals, all of those things that happen in that school will need to be in consideration for when we choose the school. We have considered a few schools, and we are narrowing that and are getting close to where we would like to go. We do believe that the potential benefits for academics is that it will reduce learning loss, and obviously more time with really solid targeted instruction will help fill in the gaps and boost academic achievement of our students. We believe that the established structures of learning support students and that time away is always a struggle to come back. And we won't have that long time away and getting them back into the norm of running school. And that we believe that will be better on behavior. It's an opportunity to take a school that maybe is low achieving and struggling to kind of reset it, establish and rebuild a school climate where high achievement is the expected norm. Again, we're going to take the opportunity to really invest in the teachers, provide a lot of professional learning and coaching and deep collaboration to ensure that they don't just have additional time, but they have additional time with some really targeted and powerful instruction, and that we believe that it will be a really big benefit to the community for the needs of those families in the summertime when those kids aren't normally supervised. And here's our fancy logo.
So this was a little bit time sensitive, and pun intended. In order to start working with administration and building out the program, start getting engagement with the community, that would need to happen likely in the first weeks of January to start building up the schedule for anticipated rollout into the summer of this upcoming summer. We're looking at just about every other type of solution to help support our schools and provide options for our families that will improve academic outcomes. In terms of the research, you can use your Googler or your AI to find out what industrialized nations and how long they send their kids to school on an average. And you'll see that the United States in that 180-day agrarian calendar is among the lowest. And so with our kids, especially at that kindergarten through 5th grade level, coming to us in certain circumstances with challenges behind already, maybe learning to speak English, maybe not getting the reading and supports at home to be able to increase and enhance their learning and their capacity that we believe they have. We're looking at we'd like to try some different things and different approaches. So this would definitely be considered a pilot. We're not looking at doing this at any other schools, but just one. And again, with legislative support, evaluating the efficacy of this type of a program or approach and coming back and seeing what we might do to improve those outcomes for more kids. And if it doesn't work, we go back to the drawing board and look at more options.
Are you aware of any other districts that have been approached by the legislature to run a similar pilot?
No. I approached them because
Understood.
I don't want to use our Title I money if we don't have to. I'd like them to pay for it.
It isn't like it's a giant movement, but there are pockets of this kind of movement happening throughout the country.
I say there's a study that you cited that was from Texas, that they did this in Texas. So, Kim?
So I have some comments, some concerns really about this. And I know we're short on time tonight, but I also hope that understanding is given that this is the first time that I've heard of this and it's being rushed on us. And so hopefully you will allow me time to express my concerns. I don't like this idea at all, to be frank. Some concerns I have, well, I also looked up some information, studies. Some show benefits, some show the benefits have produced inconclusive results, and that what's shown is that quality of time is more important than quantity of time. So more time does not necessarily equal more learning. But all kinds of things that go off here for me, like doing this means kids have less time for outside interests, which are also actually really important for kids. 30 days of extra instruction, which is kind of what's alluded to here, is basically no summer, is what that means. And I think that this will inevitably come with increased costs. I know you're saying right now it's not going to affect us. That's irrelevant. If it doesn't affect us in the pilot, great. But if we decide, okay, we're going to go ahead and do this, that's going to come with significant cost increases, which I already have issues with how property taxes are being increased to the point where people are priced out of owning homes, I think that this would be a no-go for me for increasing costs for this purpose. I do feel like some of what we're saying is a reason for this project, is that kids have a place to go, so it's a childcare tool. And to me, that's inappropriate. I feel like, again, you're taking away the summer. Kids should not be raised by the government. Kids need to be, we should be promoting and supporting things that promote stronger families, more time with families, not putting ourselves in place of families. And that is what this does to me. It puts ourselves in place of families. I think teachers are burned out by the time summer comes. I ran this by a couple of teachers. That was their immediate response. Like, we're already burned out. Who would want to do this? This is not a good thing. I think kids are burned out by the time the summer comes. I think there's other solutions that could be looked at, like maybe we had a shorter summer, but we took that break time and put it somewhere else and had longer breaks in between so that maybe we don't have such a big summer learning loss issue. There's other things like that I think could be looked at. I also think with teachers being burned out, I think this is one of those things that's going to push and increase and promote, if you will, the additional growth of tech in the classroom and AI use. I feel like that's one of the outcomes that would come of burning teachers out in this way. So I just want to make sure those are on the record, those concerns that I have. I don't think it's a great idea. I just don't. I'm sorry. But wanted to share those publicly. Thank you.
I have some concerns too. I understand where we're trying to get. I do have similar concerns that Kim has mentioned. My biggest concern though is logistics. So to tell those kids that live next door to a school, you have to choose between going to this school longer, or you'll just automatically be boundaried out to the neighbor school, which provides more problems even for those families. And so I'm over here trying to figure out, it's almost like a school closure. I hate to even mention that today, but it feels like forced on a community, and I'm not a fan of this. I don't know that I would support it. You mentioned funding. Hoping for the legislature to pay for anything is not a good strategy. They don't have a good track record right now with us on as far as, I mean, yeah, we get our WPU when they give us this money, but then they're undercutting over here. And so there's a net loss sometimes. And while we appreciate the funds that come from the legislature, I don't like moving forward with this project hoping that the money comes through. And this does feel really rushed. If we've been considering this and now all of a sudden we have to make this decision within 4 weeks, I don't like the optics of that. I don't like the board not being able to vet this more. And so right now I'm not in support.
Could I address some of those questions, concerns? I appreciate all these concerns, and I would apologize for the timeliness of this. This is actually something we speculated on under Dr. Nye's leadership. We spent a great deal of time with Aaron Wilson, who was at that time in Dr. Bramble's position. We considered piloting this at Redwood way back when. Well, we all know what happened with Redwood Elementary at this point in time. So there is a little bit of a time component. This was, with respect to the timeline, these concerns are all valid and they need to be fleshed out. And we're not expecting that we would go into a community and tell them that this is what's going to happen. We would go in and invite conversation and discussion about the possibility of this type of program, get their feedback, address some of these types of questions and concerns, and get their buy-in to being a part of that type of a pilot. The timing is such that, and I don't believe it's hope, I wouldn't have scheduled the meeting or even put this on the agenda if we did not have a strong indication that we already have the funding structure in place to be able to utilize set aside from Title I. We can figure that component out. That is the only piece. We've already problem solved on some of these other components with the funding. So again, I agree wholeheartedly with what Kim just said, and I want to reiterate this. to what Mitch indicated in his slide deck, we're looking to reestablish a school climate with quality instruction. Everything that this district is doing at this point in time has to do with improving the instruction happening in our classrooms. All of our supports, the Boost Schools, all these initiatives is about improving the instruction. So having more of the same type of low quality instruction in a school that's already struggling will not cut the fat. It will not do the trick. This is about having more quality instruction and improved and enhanced instruction. So we would definitely want to make sure that this summer portion of this program included some outdoor components, included, as he indicated on his slide deck, engagement with families, which we believe we'll have more opportunities to do in the summertime. It would be a modified schedule because we would just have one school we were providing transportation for. So our ability to be able to get kids in seats for that instruction in a shortened period of time would be more meaningful. We likely would not be pursuing a tremendous amount of non-tested subject areas. This is about getting core subjects and quality instruction in a shorter period of time during that summer block. And so again, I don't want our families to feel like they're just looking to Granite School District to provide childcare. This is about engaging with our families with high quality instruction in a program that will make meaningful difference in the lives of those families and those children by giving them the supports and help necessary to be successful. So I absolutely agree with those family concerns. We're certainly not interested in replacing the family or circumventing those family supports, but simply providing enhancements to those supports. So if our program isn't doing that and our pilot isn't working in that way, then we would want to pull back on that and make sure that it is doing that. With respect to teacher burnout, we're also very sensitive to those concerns. We still have to go and meet with our valued partners in the association to work through some of those questions and concerns. But again, we're on a little bit of a time frame here to be able to possibly implement this if everything were to go correctly and well, and we get buy-in from the community, the leadership. We do believe there are teachers who spend a great deal of their summertime working a second job, who go out and spend their time trying to earn extra money, and who would be interested in a flexible schedule during the summertime that would allow them to come and continue to meet and engage with their students. So I want to be clear that we're not working off of a strategy of hope here, because that would be absolutely ridiculous. We do feel like this is something that is meaningful, that could provide a difference. I want to make sure that we address these concerns as we move forward, and that's why I asked for this presentation tonight, knowing that things were starting to click and that we were going to be able to implement this sooner than later. I apologize again that we did not have opportunity to present this to you sooner. And that I know there were some discussions with leadership way back when about the possibilities of this type of pilot, but those quickly died down when we went a different direction with Redwood Elementary at that time. So
I do want to just add to what Superintendent Horsley said. This is all about improving student academic outcomes. And if it produces that, then it's successful. And if it does not, so the data is what's driving this. And we believe that all of the concerns that have been brought up can be addressed, and we can ensure that students get more out of this. Otherwise, we wouldn't pursue it. And if it doesn't produce that, like he said, we'll adjust.
we are a little bit short on time, but I would like to continue these conversations offline and make sure that we're addressing any and all board concerns as we continue to have these meetings before we get into any extensive conversations with whatever the community we ultimately select would be. We obviously want to have board support with respect to this administrative initiative.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and adjourn to an executive session. I do need a motion for that, for the purpose of character and competence. Sorry.
I move that we move to executive session for character and competence.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to move to executive session for the purpose of character and competence. This is a roll call vote. Please state your name as well as your vote. Julie?
Julie Jackson, aye.
Kim Chandler, aye.
Connie Burgess, yes.
Chris Wynn, yes.
Karen Winder, yes?
Clark